You would take it.
Yeah, but it's fire. It's all for another year.
You ready, Nate?
Ready.
All right, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Metropolitan Planning Organization for June 23rd, 2026. I'd like to start with a motion to take action on the minutes and subsequent roll call. So moved.
Second.
Okay, what those are. All right, Nate, you're on.
All right. From the town of Auburn, Bill Jean, Chair.
Present, yes.
Chris Sterndale.
Yes.
From the town of Bedford, Dan Heath. Dan here. Ed Comiskey.
Yep. Present, yes.
Danielle Ivancic. John Nelson.
Here, present, abstain.
Abstain. Mark Snyder.
Here, yes.
Nadir Ali. No. From the town of Candia, Ron Labrador.
Yes. Here and yes.
Here and yes, all right. From the town of Chester, Andrew Haddock.
Here and yes.
Right in front of me. Dana Theokas. Deb Munson.
Here and yes.
From the town of Deerfield, Errol Rhodes.
Here and yes.
Fred McGarry. Fred was here for the executive committee meeting virtually, but hasn't signed back in yet. He might not be able to.
Yeah, you might not.
Yeah. From the town of Derry, Jeff Moulton. John O'Connor. Richard Tripp.
Here and yes.
From the town of Francistown, Linda Kuhnhart.
Yes, here and yes.
Gary Schnackenberg.
Here and yes.
Jennifer Vadney. Not here, okay. From the town of Goffstown, Joanne Duffy. Barbara Griffin. Jacob LaFontaine.
Here and yes.
From the town of Hooksett, Mike Summers. From the town of Londonderry, Art Rugg.
Here and yes.
Brian Battaglia. Deb Levens. Jeff Penta. Patrick Cheatham. Suzanne Brunel.
Here and yes.
Right.
There's a lot of names.
That is a lot of names. Oh, right. Let's go back to Derry briefly. I think Jeff Moulton is here.
Here and yes.
Here and yes. Brian Battaglia, we just called your name. You are here virtually. Any position on the minutes?
Thumbs up.
All right. Yeah. From Manchester, Dan O'Neill.
Here and yes.
Eliza Augusta. Kevin Shepherd.
Here and stay.
Peter Capano.
Here and yes.
Ray Clement.
Here and yes.
From New Boston, Ellen Campbell.
Here and yes.
Jonathan Willard. From Ware, Naomi Bolton. From Windham, DJ Withy, who may be a few minutes late, not here yet. Ed Lapointe is excused today. Peter Griffin.
Here and yes.
Our agency voting members, William Rose from New Hampshire DOT.
Present and yes.
Thank you, William. Mike Whitten from MTA. Non-voting members. Is Lee Levine here from Federal Highway Administration? Not see Lee here. Jack Wade from New Hampshire DES.
Good morning, all.
Good morning, Jack. Are any of our colleagues from the Central New Hampshire Planning Commission here today? C1.
Yes. Riley Stafford with Central New Hampshire.
Good morning, Riley.
Good morning.
I think that's it.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
There's someone said Deb Levens. Deb Levens.
Deb Levens is.
Deb Levens. Deb Levens has arrived. Deb, any position on the minutes? We can't hear you.
Give us a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Ben Hebert, did you get Ben Hebert?
Ben Hebert is our staff. I did not go through our staff, but yeah.
Good. Thank you, Nate. New business. We got overview of stream crossing capacity project. It's an informational only, and Suzanne will be on that. There she is.
So I'm actually not scheduled to be the presenter today. I'm here to introduce our presenter.
Okay.
Who arrived a bit late and I think is working with Cam to get the presentation loaded. But luckily I have some good content to vamp on for a few minutes while we're waiting for Polly to be ready. So many of you are already familiar. You've probably seen me present on the Transportation Resilience Improvement Plan that our region put together. I believe we finalized it and this policy committee adopted it in around October of last year. We also then made sure to integrate it into the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And then we requested a determination letter from Federal Highways indicating that it meets all of the requirements of the Federal Protect Program. And good news, just this past week, we did receive that letter. So Lee Levine's not on the call today, but he was really instrumental in helping us connect with the appropriate staff at Federal Highways. We have a documentation showing that we meet all of the requirements of the program with our Regional Transportation Resilience Improvement Plan. And what that means is that should Protect discretionary funds become available again, and should we get a Protect discretionary grant for our region, that would be a 10% cost reduction in terms of the local match required for anything related to resilience improvements. But when we talk about resilience, we're really talking about kind of the long-term vision for kind of flood-proofing our transportation network. So that's a really fantastic accomplishment, and we're really happy to be able to report out that that plan has been approved. Now I'm moving forward to, I was just announcing our accomplishment about getting a determination letter from Federal Highways for our resilience improvement plan.
Really?
Yeah, I know, it just came in the past week. So now I'm really excited to introduce our speaker for today. So this is Polly Perkins. Polly's joining us from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. And they've been a really fantastic partner to help us think through, how do we take this from planning and kind of concept level to implementation. DES is doing amazing work with their coastal watershed program. They have a really significant grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation that's supporting this work. And it's really about how do we start to identify a pipeline of stream crossings that are addressing a range of priorities, whether it's transportation, water quality, wildlife crossings. We know that there's a lot of different priorities that communities have, and there's a lot of different priorities that funders have. So with this work, we're trying to kind of do some matchmaking and help communities across our region move forward on some crossing improvement projects. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Polly.
Awesome. Am I going to navigate from up there?
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, no, totally. Okay. Thanks for dealing with my technology foibles here. Polly Perkins, as Dan was saying, I work for DES in the coastal program, but I was charged with managing a statewide culvert flood risk grant program. So that kind of took me out of the coastal area. And I am going to get into a little bit today some of the work I've been doing with UNH. Actually, last time I was here in this room was about 2 years ago. I don't know if anyone's on the Transportation Advisory Committee in here, but I presented to them with my UNH grad student, who we used some of that ARPA money to develop a kind of a beta stream crossing prioritization model. And now this NIFWIF, National Fish and Wildlife grant that I got is kind of the continuation of that work. So Can't get rid of me. I'm gonna come every 2 years and tell you what we're up to.
Make money.
Yeah, and this is that's what I keep hearing as I go out and talk to the folks. Okay, so I think I'll just chill here. So, I work at DES, but I'm also on the New Hampshire Stream Crossing Initiative. Has anyone here heard of that group? Okay, I'm bringing it to the people. This is great. So we're an interagency group. I'm going to get into it in a little bit. And you'll see some slides of who all is involved, but it's been around since post the big, Mother's Day storms of 2005, 2006. This group got together and started thinking critically about the stream crossings that can wreak havoc during these large, crazy storms is what the impetus for the formation of that group was. And now we're working, it's been doing a lot of data collection, and we're working on bringing that data towards implementation. Like, how can we actually get some projects in the ground? So I'm also representing the NHSCI, the Stream Crossing Initiative, who's working to bring a multi-benefit flood resilient crossing project pipeline. So today I'm digging into a specific project, this project funded by NIFWIF called the Crossing Capacity Pilot Project. You're going to hear a lot about that. I'm going to talk about the crossing prioritization model. I'm going to give you guys a kind of a crash course, and you are fully my guinea pigs on how does this go, because I'm throwing a lot of information at you, and you're one of the first RPC groups I'm getting to talk to. So you can tell me if I've totally gone off the rails. You got to let me know how it goes. We're going to get into the Crossing Capacity Pilot Project specifically. We're bringing a bunch of resources through the RPCs, and then project timeline. So you kind of know what's going to be happening when with this pretty big effort. So why do we care about stream crossings? So specifically also stream crossings, when I say stream crossing, I use that term because it's culverts and bridges and the larger structures, the things that are actually passing streams, like those blue lines on Google Maps. Where do they cross a road or a railroad? Or even a trail, and that typically is where I'm focusing my time and resources. The bigger stuff that can really wreak havoc. Not only are we thinking about flood resiliency, but also, when you see those pictures of really intense flooding, there's lots of erosion that can have water quality impacts linked to things like cyanobacteria in our lakes. Habitat connection, wildlife passage can be blocked by structures that are too high or really small. And then kind of obvious transportation connectivity and public safety. If these structures are starting to fail or degrade to a point where you can't use the road, or you're needing emergency fixes that tend to cost more than planning ahead, which all ties back to this economic impact also. I mean, if you can't use your transportation network, you have some pretty broad brush issues that could pop up in terms of local economy. So here's the New Hampshire Stream Crossing Initiative. As I mentioned, we kind of got some photo examples of the things I was just talking about. These very sad fish can't get through this very tall culvert, we call perched above the stream bed. So the interagency group, it kind of represents the different sectors that might care about a culvert, whether that's DOT, from the transportation network perspective, Fish and Game, from the wildlife perspective, DES, we're the regulators, but we also care about things like water quality and broader environmental natural resource goals. And then Homeland Security and Emergency Management, obviously from that flooding and emergency response perspective as well. So these folks have all been getting together on a quarterly basis since about 2009. And what they came up with after those major floods was, we need to get a handle on our stream crossings in New Hampshire, because there was even some significant property damage and even some deaths caused by a particular culvert that washed out in 2005. So they came up with this New Hampshire Stream Crossing Initiative protocol. Where's my mouse? Can you see it? There we go. So that's what it looks like. And they came up with this standardized protocol. It's 90 data points are collected at each of these crossings. RPCs have a lot of intern staff that go out and do this. Each state agency has interns every summer that go out and do this protocol. And this map here is the Stream Crossing Initiative data viewer. So this is available to the public, all the data that's been collected with the same protocol since 2012. And there's 20,000 crossings in New Hampshire. You can see them all tucked in here. 80% of them, over 17,000, have been assessed using this standardized protocol. So we have this like incredible data set to tell us where there might be flooding concerns or where there might be fishy concerns. But we aren't really taking that data to the action point. And so that's what this project is all about. And if you want to learn more about this map, you can click on any of these dots, see pictures of any certain crossing. Might it flood in a big storm? Can a fish swim through it? You can talk to Cam. He's your crossing navigator, and he can teach you a little more about this resource that already exists. So why are we chasing grant dollars for things called capacity projects? My name is now on the internet next to culvert funding. So I get a lot of calls about potential grants, but unfortunately the ARPA dollars are winding down and we don't have any more funding specific for this culvert grant program that I'm currently managing. But I get these types of calls where, hey, maybe a road agent calls me and says, I've been pouring asphalt into my culvert for many moons now. It's becoming a very real problem and I need funding to help me do it because it's a big problem. It is a stream crossing. I can't do it alone. But I need money, but all I have maybe is information. So I help them find more information. This is what the SCI data viewer can look like if you really go deep. And again, Cam can help you navigate some of this, but there is a lot of really great information out there. What structural condition is it? Can a fish flow through it? Does the structure meet the stream? Has flooding happened there before? We have a lot of data you can see all at once. And so I share this data with the person that's called me for help. And I write up a custom email that, how do I get you away? It's okay. There we go. I come up with a custom email that explains each of these blobs to the person that might connect that culvert to a certain type of funding. And then I go one step further. And the Stream Crossing Initiative has developed a funding table. This is a list of grant programs we're aware of that do fund culvert and bridge work. And over here are a bunch of eligibility criteria. Does your crossing maybe remove a barrier to aquatic organisms? Then you might be eligible for the Moose Plate grant. There's a couple different scales of funding in here. And so I spend a lot of time being like, okay, your culvert's this big, you are a town with this much staffing capacity, you might be able to go after a state aquatic restoration fund, but I wouldn't suggest you go after a federal grant because those requirements are going to be crazy for you to handle as a town of 1,500 people. So I'm kind of doing that hand-holding to get folks to understand of this giant resource that we have of a big old table, what things might be most applicable to you. So that's all happening manually with me and only me. And I'm only one brain and I've only worked at the state of New Hampshire for 3 years and I've lived here for 6. So I'm a fairly finite resource at this point and I would like to do better. The other types of calls I get are maybe like from a conservation commission. A conservation commission calls me and they're like, we're super motivated by fish passage. We want to help our road agent take care of all the culverts in our town that don't allow fish through. And I'm like, that's a great idea. Let's go. Let's go to the map. And so I take them to this data viewer. You can even filter by your town here. You can filter by watershed. And you basically get a big old Excel spreadsheet that you got to download. You got to know how to click on these 3 dots here, and then you can download it and then sort and filter it by X, Y, or Z. And it takes a lot of like me meeting with this person and doing screen share and taking control and moving their mouse for them even to try and teach them how to use this resource. It takes a lot of time because it's a pretty complicated system as of right now. And the other thing I wanted to note here is, what you're left with. Like right now, I think what town is this? I can't remember. Vernon, Goshen maybe. But if there's probably maybe 80 culverts in this town. And if you were to filter by just the ones that don't allow fish passage, odds are there's still going to be 20 culverts for you to contend with. And so the other thing about this resource is like, yeah, you can filter down a bit, but you're still left with like dozens of culverts to choose from. And that isn't always the most helpful thing when you're trying to figure out where to start if you're a helpful group trying to make some moves. So that's again, a very manual process. Oh my goodness, what's happening? That wasn't. Come back. That was wild. I didn't even know I could do that. So here we go. Let's see. I want to just go from here, please. Okay, we're back. Wait, now I'm afraid to touch that picture. Okay. Anyhow, so, you know, folks who are looking to maybe think big and try to tackle multiple things and prioritize where to start. You know, I can only get you so far, and most groups have had to either like hire a consultant or like partner with a university to think at the town scale or even at the regional scale, like you guys often do at the RPC. So that can be a barrier. And so all of that kind of led to a lot of questions about how can we streamline how to help folks identify which crossings to focus their energy on. Or if they have a crossing that they know they need to take care of, how can we help them link that crossing to other types of funding that the road agent might not think about the turtle fund, you know, or the road agent might not think about water quality funding, but that's a funding source that comes out every year from DES. So that's what's led us to this crossing prioritization model, which I was here 2 years ago talking about. It's nice to actually be like, something happened. And we did make a kind of a beta version, a really, really preliminary version of this model with UNH. And we're focusing for now, this is why I'm talking to you guys specifically, we're focusing on the big Merrimack main stem and the kind of the coastal Piscataqua, Salmon Falls watersheds. We started here because it's a pilot. We're trying something new. We want to see how it goes. We had some of that ARPA money, just over $300,000, which is very substantial. We took 3 years to get through this project, and we did a lot of things. We assessed every single culvert you could get access to, was on public property and it was safe to get to. I had teams of UNH students going out for 2 summers, and they assessed every single crossing in that map that they could get to, it was 4,000 plus crossings were assessed using this project. We did a lot of stakeholder engagement, and the main thing we came up with was this beta version of a prioritization model using that big data set that I was talking about. Part of stakeholder engagement was we set up a technical advisory committee. Again, you know, I'm just one brain, so I found some friends. We got a lot of folks from the Stream Crossing Initiative. We got a couple of the RPCs, including Zach from you guys, has been engaged with this project for a long time, helping us understand what data is out there to help people decide which crossing to do over another. A couple nonprofits and even some private sector folks as well. This is a big old slide, but it is important. So I'm going to take a little bit at a time, because basically what we said to that technical advisory committee, and then we did a big survey through UNH of, if you care about culverts and bridges, what might you care about? We kind of did the kitchen sink methodology. I was like, give me everything you've got. Give me every idea. And then we whittled it down with our technical advisory committee to like the core things that we think that we know and that we have data to support. So when you think about a culvert, we came down to 7 priorities: flood vulnerability, road criticality, environmental quality, structural risk, wildlife connectivity, the habitat quality surrounding the culvert, and environmental justice as well. There's an equity component. So these we're calling goals. These are like the strategic goals that you might think about when you're thinking about replacing a culvert. And then down here, we have what we're calling the criteria. These are the different data sets that can inform a model, that can crunch the numbers. So like for road criticality, we care about average annual daily traffic. How close is that culvert to an important service like a fire station or a hospital? And what road tier is it in the hierarchy of our transportation system? And for things like wildlife connectivity, the actual data points that we have to inform, can this culvert allow wildlife through, is an aquatic organism passage score, and are there special species present at that location that might tell you whether you want to replace one culvert over another. So these goals and criteria are the data and the backbone to this model that's helping us understand what are all the different pieces of information that could be happening at the culvert you're looking at. And then we did a big old survey. That was last spring. And no, that was part of why I was here too. We got over 130 responses, and we learned from folks, okay, of all these goals that we identified, what is the thing that's most important to you? And we tried to get a broad brush of stakeholders, from transportation, water quality, wildlife. We had farmers saying, like, I can't get my crop to the market if my road is down. So the economic impacts were really in there as well. And the key takeaways here is that flood vulnerability, I'm afraid to click, but I want my mouse to show you guys what's up. Flood vulnerability here was the number one. This green bar is who rated this extremely important. And across the board, everyone, the unifying factor at a crossing is, does it flood or not? That really brings it to the forefront for a lot of people's minds. And then interestingly, the next 4 bars here in green are kind of the same, all about the same. So things like environmental quality, conservation and restoration, structural risk, and road criticality all kind of tied for second place. Was just an interesting outcome. But it just tells us that, like, if there's flooding happening, that is a real driver. And then more social kind of things like environmental justice and economic impact kind of fell. Community support and readiness was one we tried to get in there, and it kind of fell down to the bottom.
Paul, can you explain what you mean by community support and readiness?
Yeah, we had, that one was, we were trying to get at, like, is it in your resiliency improvement plan? Has the community identified your culvert in a planning document of some sort?
Got it.
And it just turns out there's regional plans. Each town has its own hazard mitigation plan. It was really hard to come up with kind of this broader scale data for that particular data point. And so that's one of the ones that ended up falling off the wayside. But we wanted to know in the beginning, is it important? Where could it go? And I think because it's also a little heady, folks were like, what are you talking about? But that's one of those pieces. So yeah, any questions so far, guys? I'm a talker, so
It's wonderful. Thank you.
I'm gonna keep going. Yeah, right here.
So I probably could have asked this earlier. What proportion of the street crossings culverts are on private property versus public?
Public. By and large, the way our map is set up, that data viewer, it's a GIS exercise. So if there's a stream that crosses a road, whether it's public or private, it should show up on that map. By and large, it's mostly public roads. Yeah, I don't know the percentage, but by and large, yeah.
Yeah, I'm Peter Griffin from Windham. Just observing the results of when you have storms and there are all these washouts and everything. Do you address the fact that a lot of the towns don't even have a maintenance program for culverts? That the disaster happens and then, oh, by the way, we should have done something about that. Is that part of this whole program to have them establish a maintenance program?
That is more in like the Homeland Security Emergency Management realm, I would say. And this project specifically, we use that information. If they identify that there's a problem crossing where there's flooding, that is likely to end up on our map, that we know that culvert is a maintenance issue. But in terms of like the program itself, I think that's something that's on the radar of the Stream Crossing Initiative. And I'm looking for good ideas of like, where do people need support to make things happen in the real world? So we're not quite there yet, I guess, is what I would say.
Okay.
But I hear you. So thanks for mentioning it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Was there another question over there? Yeah.
I noticed on your map of the state,
Yeah.
that there was a couple gaps up near the top. Is
Yeah.
that because there's no roads? Or is it because there's no crossings?
Both. It's both. The mountains, it's like less roads, right? There's less transportation infrastructure up there, but also that map was specifically of the ones that have been assessed. So it may not be that there's no crossings up there. It's just that there's been less resourcing of getting crossings done in North Country. Also, the Southwest has kind of more of the data gaps. Of that 20% that's left, most of them are in those two areas. Yeah.
Thank you.
One more question behind you.
Yeah, thank you.
We're focusing basically on things like culverts, or we're also looking at roads that's submerged.
This is specifically at the point in the road where there's a culvert or a smaller bridge, you know.
So that's submerging more of the infrastructure of the culverts and bridges.
Part of the, in that, one of the pieces of data informing the flooding goal is a model that we created at the Stream Crossing Initiative. Another FYI of all those crossings that have had the assessment done, there's a model that we run in the background that says, will this cross, based on the watershed size behind the drainage area behind your culvert, that single culvert, and how big it is, how big is the opening, and how much road is on, how very deep is it, what is the depth of cover, we can guesstimate, do we think it's gonna overtop the road or not? So the data that's informing the model at least has that data point in it. When you get outside of the section of the culvert, that's kind of where things like resiliency, broader transportation resilience plans, this would be one piece of a broader plan like that, but it's not the whole shebang. Yeah. We don't have the extent of the flooding. We just know whether or not there will be water on top of the road or not at that particular point. So it's a starting point.
Is that using a 100-year storm?
It's all of it. We got 2, 5, 10, 25, 50, 100 year. You can choose. It's right there.
We got it all.
We got them all. The bummer is, I will say about that particular data point, which you can find out on that map right now, about half the data, about half of these structures are wetland crossings. And so the model is like, can the stream fit through the culvert? With a wetland, there really isn't a stream per se. And so those don't get a flood score, which is a bit of a bummer. But then what we do have to supplement it is what we call the black flag layer. If flooding has been reported to through DOT or through HSEM, like disasters have happened, you have to report out where your flooding is. That information gets manually. There's a guy at DES who spends his time after big flooding events documenting where that flooding has happened on the road network. And so that's also available in here. It's not a perfect data set. It's manually made and based off reporting, but like it's a starting place. There was one other question. Yeah.
That's my question.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. I'm going to keep cruising. Get ready because now we're crunching numbers. Okay. So basically we found out what do people care about? And you'll notice there's a numerical value over here, right? So I'm trying to prioritize based on stakeholder engagement. So I want to use these values to drive the numbers behind my model, okay? So now I'm going to try out and see how this goes, explaining how the model actually works. So the first thing we do is we identify the data sources, right? I had all those, there's 7 goals with 17 criteria, 17 data sets essentially informing the goals. And then we have to decide how to turn some of that data into a number between 0 and 1 so that my model, my computer can crunch the numbers. Because something like this culvert is in poor condition, the model doesn't know how to take the word poor and turn it in. So we got to say, okay, poor is a number 1, because if it's in bad shape, we want to prioritize it. So when I say data transformation, that's what we're talking about. We're turning the value ratings like poor, good, okay into numbers that translate. Then we take the weightings from those surveys. So where those bars ended up, what those values were, we're averaging the scores for each culvert with these weights so that we have weighted averages to understand, is flood vulnerability an issue at this crossing? And I'm going to go through an example, but I'm going to say this twice. And then, so once we understand quantifiably what's going on within each goal at each crossing, based on all that criteria data, then we average everything for a composite score, and we come up with a draft prioritized list where every single culvert is ranked 1 through, in the case of this entire project, we were looking at about 5,000 culverts. So I have a draft list of 1 through 5,000, what this model thinks is the most important culverts in these 2 watersheds. So now I'm going to use an example a little bit. We're going to crunch the numbers. I even put up some formulas here, so we'll see how it goes. But this is the transformation, right? So I'm using aquatic organism passage as an example. Can this culvert, does it have full passage, reduced passage? Can only an adult trout get through here, or is there no passage? And at the culvert example I'm about to show you, I bolded it, no passage. So like 0 is everything's fine, pass on through. You're not going to get prioritized because you're not a worry when it comes to fish, but a 1 indicates you are a problem. So for this example, we have a culvert that has a score of 1 for aquatic organism passage. Then there's another data point that tells us whether the wildlife connectivity goal, what that score is going to be. So there's two data points, there's two criteria that average together to tell us, can this culvert allow wildlife through? Is it important? We know that there's a score of 1 because fish can't get through it. And is there a special species there? That's the other data point for wildlife. The answer is no. So, okay, for this culvert, it's important for one thing, but not the other thing. We got the weightings from the survey. Survey said stakeholders care about aquatic organism passage more than they care about special species being there. These two things get multiplied together. That's what this is telling us. And then they get divided. We make an average. Here's the actual math. And here's the example where our AOP score happens. We got a 0.8. It's divided by itself. And we have an AOP score for this goal, for the wildlife connectivity goal. We have a score of 0.52 when you crunch those numbers. Oh, there it is. Okay, and now, as I said, there's 7 different goals. So now we're doing that. Each and every one of these goals has their data sets that are getting multiplied by the weights. What did the stakeholders say they liked the most? And then they're all being averaged with each other. And then we average them again. We average all the goal scores across each other. And again, you can see here, flood vulnerability has the highest weight. So these scores are going to push a culvert higher than one that doesn't flood, and so on and so forth. These are ordered in the rank of most important. So you can see these guys are getting the highest scores and the biggest weightings. So again, we've averaged each of these, and now we're averaging them all together, weighted averages. And so this particular crossing has a wildlife connectivity score of 0.52. But because it has higher scores in the flood vulnerability category and structural risk, which have higher weights, it ends up with a total score of 0.64. So that's just like an idea of how we're connecting all this data together and using these values to try and bump one culvert above its neighbor in terms of what is the most important.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So when you talk about full passage, what year storm are you talking? About 100-year?
So that is actually, oh, I love this. It's like, I got a whole report coming out that's going to dive into the way we made the data make sense. So for flood vulnerability specifically, whether it can pass, if a culvert can pass a 2-year storm, that's great. But if a culvert can't pass a 2-year storm, which is the smallest interval, means that that culvert is likely to flood whatever 2%. Till it blows out. It has a high chance of flooding. So that culvert would get a 0, or excuse me, would get a 1 if it floods during the 2-year storm. But it's maybe it only is vulnerable. It's a gradation. So the most severe thing is if you're flooding at the smallest storm, you're on number 1. And then basically it steps wise down for each of those. If you're flooding during if you're not flooding during the 100-year storm, you're going to get a 0 for that score. And so there's a gradation between the worst of the worst and 0. That's basically like 0.7 if you flood at the 25-year, 0.8 if you flood at the 5-year, and then a 1 if you flood at the 2-year. So there's a gradation that pulls those forward. And each of those are baked into all of this. And I have a final report that I'm tirelessly working on to get done before the 4th of July, which is next week, that I can send out to you guys hopefully soon if you want to dig into the data, because we're at the phase where we're finalizing this model. I'm going to talk about that next. And so we want critical feedback. We want critical eyes to say, like, is this methodology totally wacky? I mean, we spent a lot of time thinking about it and engaged a lot of stakeholders, but now that we're publishing things, it's kind of the last chance to ask critical questions, which I'm very open to. So.
Your denominator isn't correct.
Okay, well, I did copy and paste this from several different presentations. But I hope you get the gist.
Oh, the gist is there.
Of what I'm after. And I did email my grad student last night and I was like, can you please check all of this math? Because I'm gonna take this show on the road, man.
A question about sort of the special species thing.
Yeah.
So I understand how it's graded as according to the survey results and so forth.
Yeah.
But if there's this particular species that this is its only for survival.
Yeah.
Those, wouldn't that elevate that to this? This is really supersedes all else.
Yep. and this is a great segue. I don't think I have too many more slides here. But what I'm trying to build next with this NIFWIF grant is a tool. This was the beta, and we're going to turn it into a slicker, like map-based tool where you can pick and choose which things you use to prioritize your culverts. So if you're like, I am super fired up about the Blandings turtle specifically, and the New Hampshire Fish and Game has a turtle layer, you can turn that on and you could customize what you prioritize towards. So that's where because I talk about this with people and they're like, that's the first thing I often hear is like, okay, well, like, I like that you're thinking about all of these things, but I really only care about this thing, you know? And I'm like, gotcha. So that's what we're working towards. So you can get a little more specific. Yes.
So working on what you just said, does your model have a way you can exclude criteria?
Right now it doesn't, but that's what we're trying to do by the end of this year. So this is great leading questions, but like, yeah, you can.
What's the end of the year?
Like, we're going to have a
First?
yeah, July, we're shooting for January 2027.
All right.
Yeah. I love it. It's good because it keeps me motivated that people want this thing. I need to push those consultants, you know? Okay, so just to reiterate what we walked through, this is kind of a recap of that first slide. So we use the stakeholder defined methodologies to create a score between 0 and 1. We apply the survey weightings to drive the prioritization, again, for this beta model, because we'll always have a default where it balances everything. I mean, the idea is that the stakeholder survey kind of gave us like the most balanced approach. If you were thinking about all the things, which you might not, you'll always be able to see a default value that defaults to these survey values. But then I'm hoping that what's going to happen is you can customize it for yourself and you'll be able to even compare and contrast the results to see where do my priorities compare to this like statewide priorities. And that could be powerful information as well. And then the idea is we create that calculated weighted average total crossing score that ranks all the thousands of crossings that we're looking at for this beta version. This is a kind of an example of the prioritized list that I think is just helpful to reiterate. Yes, this is a prioritization tool, but you could also click on a culvert and you can see what is behind each of these. Each of these lines is a culvert, and here's the AOP score. So you could see no passage, no passage, no passage. All these top crossings have no passage. That's not a coincidence. Some of them have a special species present, but not all. And you can see what is their wildlife score. These are all the high ranking culverts. And it's just interesting when you start to compare what are high ranking wildlife culverts might not be super high ranking structural condition culverts, right? Because we're averaging all these things together. But this is just providing a layer of data transparency that I'm hoping can help folks think outside the box when it comes to different funding types on how to make these projects happen. Because as many of you might know, these things are costing $300, $500, $1 million, and it takes more than one grant to make, and it's several years to make these projects happen.
And high is good or high is bad?
High is, it's bad. It's bad. The worst of the worst are high priority. Yeah. This is not ready for prime time yet. As I said, I'm working on the final report. And basically, we kind of already know what came out of this beta UNH project isn't what we wanted to put out to the public. So that's what's happening in January. And that's what I am now working on. So yes.
Do you have any criteria there in terms of, let's say you have two culverts that are the same, but one connects many more miles of stream upstream to the downstream, or a much larger wetland complex? I know that's really getting into the weeds, but is you planning to do that?
We are planning, so the nice thing about doing the kitchen sink methodology of like, give me all your ideas, is that I now have a huge list of data gaps. And that is one of them. Miles upstream and miles downstream is a metric that a lot of like natural resource wildlife funders think in. And so it's important for y'all to know that. But we didn't have the time basically, because that's like a really in-depth GIS analysis that hasn't been done, surprisingly. So I have hired my UNH grad student is still with me, and he's now just cranking on that type of data question. Another big one that came up was, is this the only road in and out of a community? Is it the single road of egress? That's like a big safety transportation one. It was rated the #1 in the survey piece of information for road criticality, but we don't have that data set. So we're actually like using this money to create that data for the state, which should be really powerful. For now, we're starting in just the pilot area, but yeah. Any more data ideas or specifics? Yeah.
Well, just going back to an earlier question, let's say on the wildlife component of this, does the state have a listing of the wildlife that is prevalent in those particular culvert areas? They do.
They do. Yep.
Because-
All the streams that have certain species like bridle shiner and herring and different brook trout. Those are all squiggly lines on the map. And when one of those rivers intersects with the culvert, we know that to the best extent that we can. It also is limited by where has Fish and Game gone to look. But
Well, taking that further, let's say hypothetically, if your answer was no, then I can see an opposition by the community saying, well, we don't have the funding to go out and do an evaluation of what?
right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and it's like not every river has been assessed by Fish and Game, right? So there are data gaps there, but we're definitely using what we have to make that happen. Yeah.
Thank you.
So you'd be able to ask an informed question of your select board if you needed to.
I did an exercise looking for grants for culvert upgrades about a year and a half ago, and it must have been Fish and Game that I arrived at because I was desperately looking for some kind of high value adrominous fish.
Yes. Yeah. Anadromous.
What?
Anadromous
Okay,
for the next time. Yeah.
yeah, and couldn't find much important in Chester.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Chester would be tough because you're just a little bit too far inland. Yep. Yep. So that's the thing, right?
What's hydronymous thing?
That means it's the type of fish that go to the ocean and back. So it's limited to the eastern portion of the state. I mean, you'd be surprised how far some of them get up. It's also like there are dams that block them, but if the habitat's there, it can still count. But there are some maps dedicated to that, but you know, it's fairly high level, but it is out there. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. I feel like I'm totally gobbling up all your time, so thank you, but let's keep cruising. So here I am now, because ARPA's done. We got the beta model started, and now I'm in this crossing capacity pilot project, which is, again, we're still in the pilot area, right? We're still trying something new. We haven't gone crazy yet with the whole state. It's National Fish and Wildlife, a coastal resilience fund, which is a kind of a key word, resilience. I have almost $1 million that I'm working with over about 2 years through December 2027. I have a searchable map, FYI, tell all your friends, that you can search and see. You guys are pretty well within this area. I went ahead and went in there and I'm like, I'm sorry, where? Like your top little corner, if you have a culvert on Beach Hill Road, you might not be eligible for help from my grant, but most of your guys's region is included in that map. And I'm going to talk more at the end about the implications of like this little line here, which is a watershed line. So the goal of this whole project is to streamline crossing implementation. We want to help make more projects happen, get them in the ground with database decision-making. And what we'll be offering with this project, already doing it, we have Cameron at your guys' RPC. Each of the 5 RPCs that make up the lion's share of that project area have a crossing navigator. It's about a quarter of a full-time position-ish that we've funded for this 2-year position. And they're intended to help you access all these tools. There's already a mapper that you can get information. Do you want to learn more about the funding table and what funding opportunities are there? I'm doing a lot of training with the RPC crossing navigators on everything I know to try and connect these crossings to that funding. And so they're intended to be the helpers to help the communities generate momentum for some of what can be very daunting, long-term, expensive projects. We also are going to make with the model a stream crossing prioritization tool. So that's the thing that I said is coming in January. where it's gonna be a mapping interface. You can select what priorities you care about. You can press go for your town, for your region, for your lakes watershed. It's gonna be a geographic thing. And you'll get spit out that prioritized list to help inform your work. We're also going to roll out trainings in 2027 on how to use those tools. And a big part of that training is going to be these, we're calling planning how-to guides. Because right now, what I've seen in my relatively brief time working in New Hampshire in this world is, folks all kind of stay in their lane and do business as usual, right? Like maybe you have a capital improvement plan and there's a capital improvement committee and they think about certain types of things. Then you have a hazard mitigation plan that's very focused on hazard mitigation. Maybe you have a watershed-based plan happening for a lake in your community. All of those things touch those different goals that we came to with the survey that are incorporated into the prioritization model. So these how-to guides are going to be how to make crossing management and prioritization business as usual, and how to make these kind of multi-benefit projects. How do you make them multi-benefit projects so you can get multiple types of funding to them? So that's a lot of what's going to be baked into these trainings and some actual like physical guide documents on how to make this work happen. And then the exciting thing is that I've actually hired engineers as well to provide technical assistance. So if you have a crossing in your town that it's very preliminary engineering, we're calling it opportunity site assessments. If you want to know how big a crossing might need to be if you were to replace it, our engineers could help with that. They could potentially help with some site assessment information. Maybe you need a wetland delineation. You already have a crossing you're interested in, but you need more information to gear up for your permit or to apply to a grant. The idea is that, the state has contracted with the engineer so that your community doesn't necessarily have to. We've taken on the administrative burden and we're providing the service if you'd like it. So that's another thing that folks inside that pink blob, not in that little tiny corner of where, will have access to. And the tool is where that's where the model will come through. Hold on, I think. Yep, okay. So project timeline, those are the services we'll be offering. Right now, we are gearing up for a soft launch of the prioritization model. I said the tool and the nice slick interface is going to be ready by the end of the year, but we do want to kind of pilot using it. If there's any early adopters that might be interested in nerding out with us on this model, we are going to ask Cam to connect to communities to see if anyone would be interested in testing out the model to see how it goes. So that's an opportunity that we're going to have basically until we finalize the thing and publish it in January of next year, when this spiffy or publicly available tool will be ready to go. And then we're going to have workshops, we're going to have trainings through 2027, as I was saying. And then
provide the training to.
We're providing it through UNHT2, the Technology Transfer Center. So it's somewhat focused on municipal staff, but my stakeholder list includes, engineers that work for municipalities, nonprofits that are interested in this work. It's going to be open at registration and invite. But it's going to be mostly about how to use this tool, how to connect the culverts to the different types of funding based on the information we're providing, and how to incorporate it in that type of prioritization into planning documents, again, to make it kind of business as usual. So that will be the purpose of the training, is about pipeline development, project pipeline development, how to get them going and get them through. And then ultimately, my big grand vision, which feels more ridiculous every time I listen to the news, is that I could get a big federal grant to create a stream crossing grant program to actually fund these projects. So we're working to create a pipeline of projects. I mean, yes, there are existing funding sources available, but if we could make a dedicated crossing grant program, because there's so many benefits when you work on these types of projects, they touch a lot of things. That is going to be something I'm pursuing as this all is unfolding. So,
Question.
yeah. So I just quickly though, just to wrap this up, and thank you, and I'll take your question. I just wanted to point out So CAM will be available to everyone that's in your guys' region. Your RPC is largely within the borders of this pink blob of this project. So you'll have access to CAM for sure, but you do need to be within the boundaries of this pink project geographic area in order to receive the engineering technical assistance. Those, if you have a crossing that maybe you want to get off the ground, or maybe you've had on your docket, but you need a little bit of engineering technical assistance to get you across to a grant application, or a bond, or your next select board meeting or town meeting to vote to make it happen. That engineering assistance has to be within the project boundaries. So that there's a little bit of a delineation there I wanted to highlight in terms of what services we can provide. But thankfully for you guys, it's just this little sliver that is excluded. Yes, okay, and there was a question, yeah.
I'm wondering if you envision creating for each town, once this model is all set up, creating a like a report to give to each town to kind of trigger a discussion, and to, I mean, just here's what we found, here's the list of things in your town. Come back to us for more questions and help.
Definitely. I mean, I think kind of towards the 2027 timeframe, I'm going to be counting on my RPC crossing navigators to kind of make that connection and see if folks are interested. I think, whether we can hit every town is TBD, but that's helpful feedback in terms of what will the outputs of the tool look like. Right now, it's just a giant Excel spreadsheet, which is a helpful thing for certain types of folks. But maybe some sort of spiffier report could be, there's a lot of automated stuff that can happen when you're working with tabular information like that.
With people with lots of irons in the fire, not having something pop up in their face to say, this is what we found out, and you're really in trouble with this one,
And that's what I'm planning on having. I have a person to kind of help make that happen through these crossing navigators, to be the conveyor of that information. And you're right, having something to kind of focus on. For now, it's just an Excel spreadsheet, but we might be able to get a little spiffier as time moves on.
Would that be map-based?
Yeah, so it's gonna be like an Excel spreadsheet, and then also you'll be able to export like a clickable map, kind of like what I was showing there.
By town?
Screenshot. You'll have to set a filter by town. So it'll be for that whole region, but then you can say, I want to focus here, is kind of the idea. Yeah.
You had a link on a couple of your slides, and I didn't quite manage to copy it all.
I totally gave these guys a PDF, so I'm gonna make sure they send out my slides to you so you can go through and click on the links.
Same question. Great. Any very last questions for Polly?
Somebody's had a question online.
Oh my goodness. Whoa. Thank you.
One in the chat.
See this bigger. I'm going big. Oh, hey, all right. Got it.
Could probably stop sharing.
Anything from folks online?
Well, Polly, that's a wealth of information. Thank you for us. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. And like I said, Cam is your resource, and he is your conduit to me. Although you have my contact information, don't hesitate to reach out. And thanks for the feedback. That was super awesome and valuable.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, is there any other business?
That was great.
For the MPO? It's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Polly.
Thanks, Pat.
No other business to come before the MPO. I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Peter, seconded by Gary. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Without ado, we'll jump right into calling to order the Southern New Hampshire.
How are you?
Of,
Good, thanks.
June 23rd, 2026. Look for motion on the minutes and subsequent roll call. Nate, do you need to re-roll call or are you good?
I'm just noting that Shay is here now, so I will call the roll, and I have highlighted who was here from the last one.
Perfect.
A little bit more. So
Do we have a motion? Art moves second. Errol, you got Errol over in the back there, so.
all right,
You're on.
Bill Jean,
Present, yes.
Chris Sterndale,
Yes.
Ed Comiskey,
Present yes.
John Nelson,
President abstain.
Mark Snyder,
Present yes.
Ron Laverder,
President, yes.
Andrew Haddock,
President, yes.
Deb Munson, Errol Rhodes,
President, yes.
Jeff Moulton,
Hearing yes.
John O'Connor,
Hearing yes.
Richard Tripp,
Yes.
Linda Kuhnhart,
Here, yes.
Gary Schnackenberg,
Here, yes.
Jacob LaFontaine,
Here and yes.
Art Rugg,
Here, yes.
Brian Battaglia,
Here and yes.
Deb Levens. Mute, sounded like maybe the tail end of a yes there. But, yeah, okay, there we go, yeah. Suzanne Brunel,
Here and yes.
Dan O'Neill,
Hearing yes.
Kevin Shepherd,
Aaron abstain.
Peter Capano,
Here and yes.
Ray Clement,
Here and yes.
Ellen Campbell,
Burn abstain.
DJ Withy,
Here and yes.
Peter Griffin.
Hearing yes.
Did I miss anyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, who did I miss?
Dan Heath.
Oh, Dan Heath. Dan Heath is here from Bedford.
In-house too.
Jonathan Willard, New Boston.
for the last meeting too, I just showed.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Great.
All right.
Thanks, Nate. So I got a few new business items. First on the agenda is a consideration of Southern Hampshire Planning Commission bylaws amendment. We've been having a challenge with some of our executive committee attendance and quorum. And we have a proposal for an amendment that needs action by the commission. And Nate, you so kind.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a lot to add beyond what was in the staff report. It is a fairly straightforward amendment just to change the defined quorum of executive committee members from 8 to 6. And the reason for that is we've had a number of executive committee meetings recently where we've had 7 kind of in person. We've had to bring contract approvals and things as other business to the full commission. Changing that number to 6, I think would help us regularly exceed that quorum. We do exceed 8 regularly. However, we have 2 or 3 folks that kind of generally need to participate remotely. They can't count towards the quorum in person to conduct business, because they work at 10:30 in the morning when we have our meetings and they need to be in their office, but they're participating remotely or they have other personal obligations. So after, some thought and consideration by the executive committee, the executive committee put forward this bylaws amendment proposal for your consideration today. And again, it's very straightforward. The only thing that's changing is the number 8 to the number 6.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, go ahead, Peter.
No, you muted.
Nate, as part of this, I think it's good. I know what you've gone through. Any consideration to, in addition to that, having alternates as executive committee members? Like if, say hypothetically, if somebody's coming for the regular committee meeting and you find that they're not going to have enough for the executive committee, then would they come earlier?
Yeah, we could potentially do that, alternates. Yeah, I think it's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Nate?
Bill,
Yeah, Chris.
did you discuss, are there things that maybe 6 people shouldn't do without the awareness and consent of the entire region? I don't know if you talked about because the executive committee can step in for this body on everything, right?
The bylaws lay out a series of specific responsibilities of the executive committee, approving contracts over $10,000. That's the biggest one that that when we don't have a quorum, we generally need to bring to the full commission. But I mean, certainly that's, something worthy of you all considering, but we haven't proposed anything to change the duties and responsibilities of the executive committee versus the full commission.
So there are things that I'm sorry, I read all the bylaws, but there are things that the executive committee cannot do. And what I'm just trying to avoid is 6 communities get together and do something that maybe all 20 of us wouldn't necessarily consent to. And I it's a theoretical thing, not a real worry, but
we haven't thankfully come across any, particular issues that created grievances along those lines.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's entirely theoretical and it's worse than, and that's no bigger threat than the headaches that are caused for you by just trying to do regular business.
I will add, Chris, though, that, of the 14 communities, we usually have the majority of the communities represented. It's just a handful of them are virtual, or a number of them are virtual. So we can't act on it if we don't have in-person quorum. So we're really just trying to address the in-person quorum. I think that may even promote more virtual attendance, which could lead to another problem, but.
But I hear his concern, which is the concern I agonized over for a long time when we talked about reducing the in-person, the ability for quorum, what constitutes a quorum. And it comes down to who you choose, who your community chooses to be your representative. A representative shouldn't be a representative. A representative isn't going to actively pursue doing his job as a representative. And the executive committee can't meet with a 15-minute notice to show up. Like every community gets warned that a meeting of the executive committee has been called for the date and time, and they have the choice of showing up or not. So I no longer worry about reducing the quorum size, which I feel your pain, but I'm ready to vote for it because it's not our job to assure that not too many people are doing it secret behind the doors. They're not. It's all out front, and it's your community's representative choice to do his job as a representative for you, or you should get a different guy. So I support the motion and I would move it forward.
The only other thing I would add is that for the executive committee, the majority of the work of that is not, it's for the commission and not community specific. It's, things don't come up that affect one community versus another community.
So you're saying it's supposedly internal related to the operation?
Internal operations, yes.
Building management
decisions,
contracts.
Yeah, we just approved a landscape contract to clean up the property here at the executive committee meeting that took place an hour ago. We have some termites, unfortunately, in the basement, and we approved a pest control contract to deal with that. So those are the types of things, on a month-to-month basis that the executive committee is dealing with.
So if I heard Linda, we had a motion to move forward. We have another question. One more.
How many members are there?
There's 14 communities, so
each of the municipalities is entitled to a member of the executive committee. And so, yeah, I guess, fully seated would be 14. We have a couple of vacancies right now.
So the idea, I think, with the 8 people is that you have a majority. Executive.
Yeah, that was the original idea behind the 8. Yeah.
Does kind of make sense.
Almost.
So I believe we have a motion by Linda to move forward.
I'll second it.
Peter seconded. Any other discussion? Not all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
What about family balance?
Not have those.
Always trying to complicate things. Next up is a consideration of the fiscal year 2027 budget, to adopt the budget. This has been reviewed, presented. Nate will.
Yes.
Everyone receive that in your
point of things that come to the full commission for action. The budget is one of the things that comes to the full for action, as do the annual dues, each year, the municipalities' dues. And so in your packets was a copy of the draft fiscal 27 budget. I do have a brief presentation highlighting some of the highlights of the draft budget. Those of you on the budget and executive committees know that I can talk for a long time on the budget. I will spare you the extensive in-depth aspect of going line by line through this, but I will walk through the highlights of the draft budget over the next few minutes, and happy to answer any questions after that if there are any. So we here, in looking at the fiscal 27 draft budget, it is a balanced budget. And we are balancing it based on an estimated $2.288 million in revenues, which is just under a 1% increase year over year from fiscal 26. So pretty level overall revenues. We have met with both the budget committee and the executive committee and indeed walked line by line through the draft budget with both of those committees. A number of you in the room have either served on one or both of those committees and have heard some of this before. And I guess lastly, on a big picture kind of, financial status, I would note that we do have a solid fund balance reserve that gets audited every year as part of our annual audit process. Our auditors do present to the executive committee every year. When the audit is published and completed, so the members of the executive committee can ask the auditors any questions they may have and hear directly from our auditors. We do deploy some of that fund balance, and we have 4 reserves where we deploy some of those funds. The first is an operating reserve. The second is what we call an infrastructure reserve, but is really effectively a buildings and grounds reserve. We own this building. So the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission owns this building and this property. And we are a landlord to a tenant that is on the ground floor of this building. So we have a reserve for any building and grounds needs. We have a reserve for accrued benefit liabilities. We just had a long tenured staff person retire. Accrued benefits are owed when people retire or leave the service of the commission, accrued paid time off and things like that. We have a reserve to cover those expenses, as well as we own a vehicle, and we have a vehicle replacement reserve for when that vehicle reaches the end of its useful life. So hit some highlights of revenues here. The full commission set its fiscal 27 municipal dues rate level at 67.6 cents per capita. That is the 7th consecutive year of holding a level dues rate. Your individual municipalities' dues may go up or down slightly based on whatever because we adjust it to the current population estimates of each municipality. But overall, pretty level in terms of municipal dues. We do have some local projects that are continuing year over year. We call them circuit riders. I don't know why that is an adopted term of regional planning commissions. It comes from the Old West, when there was a circuit rider judge who rode his horse from town to town, and he would be the judge in each town. On Wednesday, he'd be the judge in this town, and then on Friday, he'd be the judge in that town. Whenever a community needs our help kind of on an ongoing basis for planning staffing purposes, we call that circuit riding, and we help 3 communities with circuit rider services right now.
You ride in on a horse though?
We don't ride in on a horse, although it would be stylish if we did. So those are Auburn, Deerfield, and we will be starting up again in Londonderry next week to provide circuit rider services to the town of Londonderry during a period where they're going to be in between staff. On the state and federal side, the 2 largest revenue contracts we have, what we call our UPWP, our Unified Planning Work Program with the New Hampshire Department of Transportation. We are in the middle of that contract cycle, so we're entering the 2nd year of our 2-year UPWP contract. We also administer the Section 5310 Federal Transit Administration funding that comes into the region that supports elderly and disabled transportation services. We administer about $560,000 a year of that funding passes through us and to 4 subrecipients that we'll talk about in a minute. The only state funding that we got as a regional planning commission and was what we called the targeted block grant funding. That was $11,111 per year. It's $100,000 statewide, divided equally between all 9 regional planning commissions. So we each got $11,111. Unfortunately, that went away in this current state budget. So the fiscal 26-27 state budget doesn't have any targeted block grant funding. Unfortunately, there's no state funding that supports any aspect of our budget at this point after the loss of that $11,000. We do have a couple of multi-year projects that will be concluding in fiscal year 27. So our multi-year brownfields assessment program will be concluding in fiscal 27. That doesn't preclude us from applying again for a new brownfields grant that would continue in the coming years. But our current brownfields grant is ending in the middle of fiscal 27, as well as our HUD-funded regional comprehensive plan update also ending in fiscal 27. So we've got a couple of multi-year projects ending, and as we look to fiscal 28, we'll need to begin to diversify our revenues again. And there are a couple of new opportunities that are emerging even as we speak on that front. We do have some other continuing projects in fiscal 27. We continue to assist New Hampshire DOT with their SMART grant. We are administering the Piscataquag River Management Plan. Most of that is being done by a consultant, but we are administering the project, as well as the stream crossing capacity project that you just heard about from Polly Perkins. Other revenues, we do, as I mentioned a minute ago, have a tenant on the first floor of the building. We are not changing the tenant's rent or anything this year, and we do anticipate that the tenant will continue to be our tenant through the course of the year in fiscal 27. We also are fortunate to be recognizing some interest on our reserve investments, which are held. I use the term investment. There is no risk associated with how we hold our reserves. They are held in the New Hampshire Public Deposit Investment Pool, which is not a risk-based entity and is overseen by mostly a board of municipal finance officers around New Hampshire. Most of our reserve funds are held there. We do get a competitive interest rate. I think it's currently 3.7% on those funds. And we have benefited from that. Who knows where the interest environment is headed in the coming year? If I knew that, I'd be on Wall Street or something at this point. But rate reductions could theoretically begin at any time. You never know. On the expense side of the budget, our biggest costs obviously are salary and benefits for our staff. And in fiscal 27, essentially level from fiscal 26. They're down 0.4% from the current budget. It's a few factors at play there. We do have cost of living adjustments and a merit pool for our existing employees heading into fiscal 27. But at the same time, we've had staffing transitions, obviously Sylvia's retirement and some staffing transitions that have happened there. So Suzanne and I have assumed new positions, but at the same time, that opens a position that we need to fill to get back to the 12 FTEs that we need. And we're filling that with a mid-level position right now. So that has resulted in some cost savings that have offset some of the COLA and merit increases. Significant increases in our health insurance premiums, as I'm sure all of your municipalities have been dealing with as well. But we have improved our opt-out incentive. So we incentivize employees if they have other insurance available through a spouse or through their parents to take an opt-out incentive through us to not go on our insurance, essentially. And that has helped us to keep costs fairly level, even though the underlying premiums are going way up. I personally am on my wife's insurance. Which is a completely different insurance offering from a completely different. And so by not being on the commission's insurance, I'm saving the commission money, essentially. Other benefits, short-term, long-term disability, life insurance. We're in a small pool in Health Trust for those. They could fluctuate significantly up or down. Based on whatever claims may come from the pool. In fiscal 27, we're benefiting. We've got advantageous rates for disability and life. On consultants, we do have a significant portion of our EPA Brownfields project is consulting work to actually do the work of environmental testing, the phase 1 and phase 2 site assessments. We use a consultant called Crederi Associates for that work. And as I mentioned, we do administer the 5310 funding for elderly and disabled transportation services in the region. We have 4 subrecipients for those services. Manchester Transit, Easter Seals, Rockingham Nutrition, Meals on Wheels, and Caregivers. As we're going into the second year of a 2-year contract there, we're not anticipating any changes to that. Those are largely services that are overseen by our regional coordinating council. We just administer the funding and that passes through us. Other expenses, computer and software expenses. Everything is subscription-based now, and all of those subscriptions are going up year over year. And so I think each year moving forward, we're going to continue to see increasing software costs because of that dynamic. We've got a little bit of an increase in our audit service cost. I don't want to get too in the weeds and bore you too much. We have to hire an actuary every 2 years to do a GASB 75 valuation, which is other post-employment benefits, because we are a member of the New Hampshire retirement system. We have to quantify our other post-employment benefit liabilities, and we hire an actuary to help do that. And if we didn't do that, we wouldn't get a clean audit. So we want to make sure we always get a clean audit. So we pay the money to the actuary to do that. We do have some equipment and maintenance line item. We kind of have this line item called equipment and maintenance. It's really for mostly building systems type work. We will be doing what we call a property conditions assessment. We will have somebody to go through, a qualified person, whether it be an engineer or an architect, go through the entire building from top to bottom, structurally, building systems, and tell us where they see concerns, and that will help us to identify and prioritize where we need to make building improvements over the coming years. There is some interior painting that needs to be done in the building, and we are planning to do a replacement of our telephone system, which has reached the end of its useful life. So we're looking at that in fiscal 27 and have budgeted accordingly. That's my high-level overview of the budget. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any on individual line items, but
Peter.
I had one question for you, Nate, and it had to do with auditing. It seemed to me that you zeroed out a line item for audit. Why?
We zeroed it. That's not the audit. We had budgeted last year for, really the idea was to have a CPA come in 1 or 2 days a week as to do like high level kind of finance oversight. That was when we had a staffing transition with our finance manager before Aloyo had come on. Some of the things that we need to do, file IRS 941 form on a quarterly basis. There were certain things that I wasn't sure how complex they were going to be at the time. And so we budgeted for some potential help. Here we are a year later, we have Aloyo on board, and she's done a great job getting up to speed on everything. And it turns out some of the things that I thought might be sinkholes of time or difficult to do haven't been that difficult to do between the combination of Aloyo and myself. So we never did actually hire that consulting CPA to come in and provide that because we didn't need to. And so we don't think we need that moving forward. And so we've zeroed that expense out for that reason. I think it turns out that some of those things that I thought might be tricky or challenging to do aren't really that tricky or challenging to do. It's a long answer to a short question, but yeah.
Any other questions for Nate? Again, this was reviewed line item by line item extensively by the Budget Committee and the Executive Committee. So I appreciate the thoroughness that Nate and Suzanne did to put this thing together. So look for a motion to approve the proposed budget for 2027. So and Dan, take your pick, Aloyo. Got Peter behind you and Dan O'Neill. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a budget. 27.
Thank you very much.
All right. Another item on our agenda that I wasn't aware of is my role in appointing a nominating committee. Apparently, nominating committee shall be appointed by the chair of at least 3 commissioners in advance of the annual meeting. So purpose of that is to nominate candidates for each of the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission's officers, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer, as well as the at-large positions. So we're seeking nominations for we're seeking volunteers for that nominating committee. Anything?
Yeah, I think you've said it all. The bylaws are very clear about kind of the timeline and process of appointing a nominating committee and how that works and when the nominating committee needs to make its report. And so as I was working that calendar backwards, I was like, okay, well, if we're going to be, it's time. Yeah. So it doesn't need to be really, it's actually Bill's in the bylaws. The chair is given the authority to appoint the nominating committee. We just need 3 volunteers who might be willing to serve on the nominating committee.
So do we have any volunteers? If not, I'm going to appoint them.
When would they meet?
I don't think it's a heavy lift, Nate, right?
I don't think it's a heavy
Thing or two.
Probably 1 meeting and then the division of labor and some phone calls to happen. After that. So I would assume 1 meeting followed by each of us doing some phone calls.
I'll vote.
Peter? You want me to? Carol? Thank you. Ray? All right.
Except we're in the same.
Yeah, you're in the same community, so we need you have 2 from the same community. So late to the party. You guys can fight it out. It's up to Peter and Ray to decide which.
Okay.
1 more. If we don't have one, we'll select one and let you know. No, seriously. You volunteer?
No. You would volunteer someone?
Voluntold. Oh, yeah, we'll volunteer somebody. So. All right.
You are eligible, Richard. You're eligible to be a member of the nominating
I
committee.
have enough things. I've been thinking about putting this.
Can't leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One liner.
Third volunteers.
Jonathan, okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right. Is there any other business that needs to come before the commission? None. Look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Ray. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Look at that. 3 minutes early.